field, and he used to be giving a commentary at the same time while he was kicking the ball about.
What Paul was? Paul.
Yeah.
So Paul used to.
But he was real quiet, shy boy. If he saw you in the street. Yeah.
Paul was. He's quiet, isn't he?
Yeah.
So, and you used to see him on the field?
Yeah, kicking the football about, and saying out footballers' names.
As it was playing football.
Right, I'll leave you guys to it.
All right, Richard. If we don't see you in here, Richard, I'll knock on your door.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. All right. See you in a bit.
Right.
See you in a bit.
Bye.
Joan, I've got a question.
Yes, right.
And there's a picture in here. I think. What will it be?
Which one?
Oh, I know. Sorry, I'll be able to show you. It's one of these because it come off your wall, Joan. So I think it's the. There. Is that? Oh, that's.
There's a street party.
Yes, here we go.
Yes.
I'll put that back in a minute.
There's 3 people I don't know.
There's just 3 on there that you don't know.
No.
What I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that in front of my camera.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not very clear, but what I've done is we've got a beautiful picture of that actually, but I've just not printed it off. Well, can you still see them to name them, or do you need a better photo?
No, if I can have my magnifying glass.
Yeah, here it is, Joe.
Yeah. Thank you.
There's a lot of people on there, you know.
Yes, there is. Yeah.
Do you want me to take it out of the frame, Joe?
Yes, it would be.
It's a bit shiny.
I mean, there should be somewhere a photocopy of it, and it's on a stiffer thing to get it. But whereabouts it is, because Richard, you see, that's
I think
better.
I think you'll be better like that.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
So if you...
What do you want to know about?
Well, I just wondered if you could name them. If you...
Yeah.
Can you go from like left to right, naming what people
Yes, the back row is... The first one is Mrs. Norgate, who lived at number 19, on the back row. And then there's my dad, Harry Elston, at 17. Next to him is Arthur Crossland, who lived at number 11. Next to him in the cap is Mr. Phillipson, who was a railway engine driver. By his side is Mrs. Hewitt, who lived at number lived on the opposite side of the road, the last house. Then there's Mrs. Brough and her husband holding a child. I think they were at Oakland's Cottage then. Then there's Mrs. Winifred Milton, who lived at number 24. Then there's my mum, Winifred Edith Elston, with a paper hat on. And then there's the children. There's Crystal Fletcher, there's Marjorie Crossland, Peter Glasby, and then behind them, stood up in front of the tree, is Alan Neal and Terry Redfern, who lived at number 1, which was the fish and chip shop. for quite a number of years. It was best chips and fish in town.
Was number one on the? Is that on the corner?
No, there's East Dean first, the house that's painted white.
Oh, that's on this side of the street.
Yes, where Dennis Hodgson lived.
That was a chip shop. Did that have a name? Can you remember if it had a name?
Well, no.
Just
first of all, it was Mrs. Granger, and then there was Mr. Revel and his wife. He also, in the daytime, was a cobbler, and he worked at Mr. Shaw's on Carrogate Bridge.
Oh,
As a cobbler, yeah.
There was a cobbler's on the Carrogate Bridge?
Yeah, and then his two daughters, they were twins. One of them, and husband, Mr. Rogers, they lived down Strawberry Road. But the one who married a Retford, they took over the fish shop after Mr. What did I say his name? After Mr. Revel retired, that was it, yeah.
Ah.
And then there's several different owners after that. But it was a sad day when it was a fish shop no longer.
Yeah. Did you eat fish and chips?
Oh, we did, yeah. And they used to do, you'd ask for scallops. That was like roast potatoes, but we called them scallops, as thinly sliced. And a few bits. Well, that was, a few bits of the, the batter. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they used to, the fish shop where the counter was, they had the thing on that they pulled to cut the potatoes.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, you could see them doing that, yeah.
Can you remember it becoming a chip shop, or was it always?
It was already when we came, 1937.
So in 1937?
Yes, it was a fish shop in the front room, that was. And the door was at the side, right hand side, as you going between the gap with number 3.
Oh, it was a door down the side to get in.
On the property, there was a door on the side, and later on it was just a tiny window when it wasn't a fish shop anymore.
Can you remember who owned it then, when you first moved here?
Yeah, it was a Mrs. Granger, but she didn't seem to be there long before it was Mr. and Mrs. Revel.
And what year would that have closed down? Any idea?
Oh, no, I mean it was still there during the war, because and people used to come from miles around, and all children used to be sitting on the wall at the side of the garden, waiting to go in. And if they saw a certain lady, Mrs. Mountain, coming she lived at the house just as you turn up at Caledonian Road from London Road, and she had sort of quite a large family. She was the grandma to quite a few children, and of course if any children saw her coming, they used to rush to get in queue quick because she had a big order, and she used to wear a brown coat which was all grease marked, where she'd held a pack of chips wrapped in newspaper. There's this great big patch on the coat.
Wow.
You see, because I think they were a poor family, but a washing was always perfect, even though she was near the railway, near the railway lines, the house there.
Oh, I see. So when she pegged the washing out,
yes, yeah.
The railway didn't affect it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was the fish shop, and it was a sad day when it stopped being one, yeah.
How old do you think you might have been when it closed? Can you?
Well, it was still open during all the war. That finished 45, so I think it was still open when I started work.
Oh, okay. So
In 1946. Yeah.
And what about the shop opposite? Was that, as that always was? Because there was a shop on the corner.
Yes, at Newtown Stores. That was the Appleby's. Her mother was still alive when we came, but she was in a wheelchair because when the shop was closed on in Wednesday afternoon, I remember when we were first here, her mother was trying a little walk, and Miss Appleby pushed me in the wheelchair.
Oh, right,
down
okay.
Strawberry Road. Yeah.
Oh, but you loved that, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yeah. And then Miss Appleby had it till she retired, and some people called Cooper from Codner in Derbyshire had it for so long. And then there was Mr. and Mrs. Neville and the son John. And John did that tray. And he did lots of recaning. He said they didn't bother with him at school in those days. He was a bit slow at learning. But I mean, he used to cane chairs, and he also did one for the Dame of Sark in the Channel Islands, recaned a chair. And also he did a big Bergère chair, one with caning all the way round, like a big armchair it was. And I don't know who that was for, but I did see that when he finished it, yeah.
Yeah, so who was that? Was that
John Neville, and his mother was descended, I don't know whether it was the brother of James Mallard William Turner, the artist, who painted the Fighting Temeraire and all that.
Oh, right, okay, so, and John Neville was related?
Yes, to Turner's brother, and they'd got a painting of the brother as you walked in the hallway at the house.
And, right, okay, so was John Neville something to do with the shop?
Yes, he was the son. And when he came, my dad said to him, "How old are you, John?" He says, "I'm 33. He was 33. He had a bit difficulty in speaking and
wow.
Sort of walking, etc. But he used to call regularly to see us all. And if he went to his house after both his parents had died, he'd always ask if you'd like a drink of tea. His mum had taught him well, but he said they didn't bother with him at school because he was a bit slow at learning.
And did the shop shut when his parents died? Or?
No, there was, I think there was two different families had it at the same time, I think. You know, I think they all lived at the shop, but I can't remember their names. And then and then there was the Charlesworth. I think they were the last ones. Mrs. Charlesworth, she had a son, Teddy. Well, he was still alive a few years ago, Teddy Charlesworth. And his mum she was a conductress on the buses.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah,
so when did he make this? I'll just hold that in front of me camera. Is this old, or is this how old is this?
Well, it's I should say it's probably about 20 years, something like that.
Well, that's 20 years old, is it?
Yeah, about, yeah. Oh, it looks as though it wants a good clean underneath.
Don't
I
worry
had
about
to get
that.
my carers to do that. Yeah.
What? So John Neville?
Yeah.
It made this 20 years ago.
Yes. And
But it wasn't a shop then, though, was it? 20 years ago? Or was it?
Oh, I don't, I never sort of took much notice of how many years ago it was. But, as I say, John was 33 when he came now.
So when
He lived, he was oldish when he used to have carers.
Oh.
But he used to, he worked at bonuses at Gamston, and he used to cycle there. Well, he used to be in Midlet Road very often. Everybody used to be scared he'd get knocked down. And then when he was pushing his four-wheel trolley, when he'd done his shopping, he'd get in Midlet Road and everybody was thinking, oh dear, Pud, but get out of the way, John.
Did
So
John?
I don't know whether you can. He lived at number 6.
Yeah, I think I do remember him. Yeah.
Yeah. And
but he didn't. So did he live in the shop at some point then, and then?
yes, and then they moved to number 6. Yeah.
They moved into number 6.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got you. Yeah. And I do remember him now. You've said all of that.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. But so, well, my dad gave him a bedroom chair we had that had a cane seat with a hole in, and he started off on that doing the caning.
Really?
Yes.
He started. That's where he started doing caning.
Yeah.
And then he was able to do some
yes, yeah.
caning for.
Yes, and his parents helped him do the beads and things like that. But yes, yeah.
And he was related to Turner.
Yeah, his mother was. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yes. She told me herself. Mrs. Neville did. Daisy Neville. It's a pity they're not on it, but I've got a photo of her on it at my parents' golden wedding party.
You've got a photo of what, Joan?
Mrs. Neville, I'm sure. She was still alive then.
Of Mrs. Neville? You've got a picture of Mrs. Neville?
Yeah.
And you said that when you went in the house, was there a painting white?
Well, it was a darkish colour, so whether it was a proper paint, original painting, or whether it was a picture of it, but it was in a frame on the wall.
Really? What was it? What was that of?
Just his head and
whose head?
Turner's brother.
Oh, so Turner painted a pub. Well, there's a picture.
Yeah, there's a picture of Turner's brother. So I don't know what happened to it after John had died. Whether we never heard anything after that. But as I say, Mrs. Neville told me that.
Wow.
And she said a relative, I don't know whether it was a daughter-in-law or somebody in the family who was concerned with the Turners, had got a painting under a bed. So whether it's one that's been discovered of Turners, I don't know. But that's what she told me.
So just before we go back to that picture, one of the neighbours mentioned somebody living on the other side of the road who died in the First World War, I think, but had 23 children. Does that ring a bell? Or
23 children? Is that somebody else? Because that's the Allwood family.
Oh, okay. Who's the Allwood?
They relate my great-grandmother and grandfather.
Oh, right.
Are said to have had 23 children lived to be dressed.
You did, right. I'll get back to you with that one then. I can't remember what the lady said, but she said it's a little bit famous on the other side of the road, one of the houses, because of somebody a guy who died in the First World War.
My grandfather did. But at the Battle of the Aisne.
Your grandfather, when you say
George
there, where do you
William
mean?
Allen, on that picture on the wall there.
Did he live in Richard Street?
No.
No, okay.
No, he was at Greenville Villa Farm Cottage, down Grove Lane. And then he was conscripted because he was 38, it said, when he was killed at the Battle of the Aisne, 27th of May 1918.
Right, okay. Oh, right. Well, I'll come back to you with the gentleman over the road, whoever that was.
Yeah, John Neville. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So can you remember where you got to?
Yes, it was the children who got there. Now then, we're starting here at the side in front of. There's Mrs. Bamforth, who lived at number 13. Then there's the couple with the child, that's Mr. and Mrs. Bruff from Oaklands. And then I've given you the rest there, yeah. But then I'll come back again to the table. There's the Mayoress, Mrs. J.R. Waterfield, and behind her is, I don't know his Christian name, but it's Mrs. Mary Crossland, the lady with the spectacles, brother. Then there's sat at the table beside the brother is a little girl on Mary Crossland's knee. That was Mary Neal. Behind the mayoress you can see her. And then sat at the table is Mrs. Constance Holden with her young daughter Anne. Next to her is Mrs. Selby, where Sir Kenneth Macmillan was billeted. And that's the lady who was knocked down walking from behind a bus. But that's her brother sat with her. I don't know his name. He was just there at the party.
So the lady that was knocked down by the bus, what street, can you remember what street she was knocked down on?
It was on London Road, opposite Caledonian Road, getting off the bus that used to stop there.
And where did she live?
She lived at number 7 Richard Street.
Yeah, okay. It was fatal, was it? Did
yes,
she die?
I'm afraid it was, yeah. But it was a few years after the war, because that was when Kenneth was still at Royal Ballet.
Who's Kenneth? Is Kenneth her son?
Kenneth Macmillan, yeah.
The book?
Yeah.
Is that her son?
No, it was evacuee. He was evacuated from Yarmouth Grammar School, the same as Victor Stowers, who was already at the Selbys, and Kenneth was friendly with him, and where Kenneth was billeted he wasn't very happy, so he asked if he could be billeted on the Selbys, which was arranged, and he lived with the Selbys during the war.
At number
7.
Okay, and the lady the lady who was looking after him.
Yeah,
she died.
She died a few years later.
With the bus accident.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, so he must have been upset then.
Yes, he would, and he lost his mother as well.
And just while we're talking about
Kenneth, yeah.
Kenneth.
Yeah.
What did he do? Why is he famous?
He was a ballet dancer to begin with. Saw him dance as a boy at Retford, at the victory parties and on the cricket field. Yeah. There was a lady on Strawberry Road who lived at the end house called Mrs. Mackay, and she taught him dancing, and then he was at Joan Thomas's dancing school, and Joan Thomas was in her 80s, and they used to have a reunion every year. Yeah, she lived to be a good age, this dance teacher. Joan Thomas.
Where did she live, or where did she do it?
I don't know where. I can't remember, but it'll be in there somewhere in the book. Because there's the part where it mentioned being at Retford and Richard Street.
And did you know him personally, John?
Oh yeah, we used to play skipping with him.
Are you the same age?
Roundabout, yes, yeah. But sadly, he passed away a few years ago, and he was watching. It was the interval of the ballet that had been choreographer for, called Mailing, and he was missing after the interval, and they went looking for him, found him in a part of the theatre that nobody had ever went to, and he must have had a heart attack and died.
Wow.
And it was at the interval of his ballet that he'd done the choreography for, and he was knighted. He was Sir Kenneth. But
Wow.
years before that, I mean, when he was at Covent Garden, I wrote to him, and that's the picture that his secretary said sent me a note, which I've got somewhere, but I think that's upstairs in the bureau I've got up there.
Let me just lift that up. The reason, because is that him? A
Yes.
picture of him? Because
Yeah.
on there you'd think he was like a young man now, wouldn't you? But
Yes, yeah.
That's an old picture of him, but he looks brilliant.
Yeah, and that's in there, yeah.
So did you know when you were growing up with Kenneth on the street?
Yeah.
Did anyone think it was a bit weird that he did ballet, or was that just completely normal?
No, you see, because there was this lady who was teaching him dancing, and no, we didn't. I mean, we all played together. I mean, every house had evacuees, just about. They were just two old ladies, I think. Miss Fields and Miss Cooper were at number 14 who didn't. Oh, and Miss Cooper's brother, Ernest, who lived at number 12. He was a fireman, I think, on the railway. And his father was an inspector on the railway. And I had a photo of him somewhere, but don't know where that is at the moment. Because things were moved, you see, when I'd had my stroke, so that I could get about a bit better.
So you would play. So did Kenneth leave to do bigger and better things?
Yes, he did.
When he was a teenager, late teenager?
Yes, but then he began to have stage fright. So he started doing choreography, you see, and it was from there. And then he was, I've forgotten what the title is, but he was in charge at Covent Garden for so long. And then he went to Germany, and I think he was in charge there of a ballet.
How do you think you know that he had stage fright? Is that
because it's in the book?
You've read that,
it? Yes, yeah.
So that book there tells you about his life.
Yes, after he'd left Retford. Yes.
So you know all about him then.
Yes, yeah.
Was he?
He was a quiet boy. Seemed a bit shy to me. Yeah.
Would you say he was a good friend? Because you kind of lived on the same street.
Well, he was okay. But quiet. sort of.
So would you have walked to school with him, do you think?
No, because he went to grammar school and we used to go to the national school. So we walked down Strawberry Road or went down Wharton Street over the railway footbridge. Yes.
I'm going off course a little bit just for a second or two, but there was a windmill over the back.
I think, it's at Wilson's Mill, and there was Ostler's Mill as well. I can vaguely remember one on Caledonian Road, and there was still the mill house then, but it's been knocked down on Caledonian Road. It said it was 1937 when the windmill on Caledonian Road was knocked down. I can vaguely remember seeing it.
Really?
Yes. And then Ostler's Mill there's the mill house. It's part on the back of Richard Street and part fronting onto Caledonian Road. The house is sort of back to front.
Yes, the back to front house.
Yeah,
it's like the first one on Caledonian Road as you come off Richard Street.
And when we hadn't got a bathroom, we used to go across to number 12, for a bath, and the bathroom window overlooked the front of the mill house. So that's when we first knew that was the front of the house, and the other bit was Grove Lee, I think they call it.
Was the windmill still there, that windmill that you're talking about now, or not? Was it just the house?
No, I can't remember, because I think that the one that got on fire. I've got a book about all the windmills round about somewhere.
I think that one, I wonder if it was Storecroft. Was it Storecroft?
Yes, it's Storecroft. That was at Ostler's Mill.
Ostler's.
There was Aaron Ostler, I remember her name. Yeah.
But you never actually saw that windmill?
No.
Because it had gone.
But there was some, like a bit tall building, but then they were partly demolished, and I think it's garages on Storecroft Road now.
Yes, garages, yeah.
Yeah. So that was where this big building was, and we could see the big building with the windows. But I don't know whether it was just where the corn was supplied or what, I don't know.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and there's a lane called Cutthroat Lane. It's mentioned in my deeds, and there was some doubt as to, because there's a Cutthroat Lane, there was up to Leverton Hills there. So whether it's a continuation of there, and there's part of Pottery Lane on Caledonian Road, and I think it's, as you turn to go onto Caledonian Road from Richard Street, there's the house on the corner and a little slope down, and then the gardens are lower down, the gardens for Hine Street. Well, that was a pottery there, and I think that must have been Pottery Lane.
Really?
Yes. It's only my thoughts that it was there, but that's where the ground is lower down.
Oh, right, okay.
So whether people in the garden have dug anything interesting. But Mr. Manby, my mum and dad looked after in his older age, said his mother was given a pension which Mr. Manby had given to my dad, that was made at Newtown Pottery, and that's at Bassetlaw Museum. Dad sent it there.
And what is that?
A pension, a pottery big round thing that they used to mix bread in and things like that.
Oh, okay.
They called a pension. Pancheon.
And that was what, given to your dad?
Yes, by Mr. Manby, who said his mother was given it from Newtown Pottery.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then there's Brickyard. There was the Brickyard on Strawberry Road, which is opposite, as you get to where the bend is and it comes Westbourne Close. Well, there was poplar trees there, and Mr. Broughton lived in a house which you couldn't see because of the orchard and the trees. And then there was a lane on the right, a little lane, which we always called Cotham's Lane, because the farmer had Newtown Fields down there, and we always called it Pottery Lane.
Wow, was it?
Not Pottery Lane, Cotham's Lane. Yes.
Cotham's Lane, because
the name of the farmer, and they had a daughter called Otterline.
Really?
Yes.
Really?
But she was older than us, so we didn't play with her, you see.
Right,
But
okay.
we walked down there. We used to go in the field, Newtown Fields.
Did you say there's a brickyard or something?
Oh yes, there was. Yes, a brickyard was opposite the houses. It's what is the children's, what was the skate park or whatever, and that belonged to the Hine family, who Hine Street is named after. There was a Tom Dennis hound, and then his son, and the last Mr. Hine there used to keep chickens on there.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you walked past a brickyard.
Yeah.
What does a brickyard mean? What do you mean a brickyard? Is it?
Well,
they
made bricks. Yes.
What from?
So whether the houses were made from bricks at Newtown, I don't know.
Oh, brilliant! Do you think they made the bricks from? Was it like a quarry as well, or do you think?
I don't know how it was, but I mean it was a big area, and it all belonged to Dennis Hind in our time.
And then there were some big poplar trees.
The opposite side, just round the bend, and then you could see them for miles if you were sort of walked to Levant Hills. You could still see them. There was a lot of poplar trees, and eventually it was made into Westbourne Close. And there used to be a row of houses, terraced houses, near the railway bridge, footbridge. And then where the bungalows are now, it was the gardens, and then there was a patch of grass opposite, the length from the side of the railway down to where the first house is at the bottom of Strawberry Road that leads to Newtown Fields. That was drying ground for all the people who lived in these houses. Yeah. So they used to hang the washing out there. And then on there was a house built in later years.
Can you manage?
I thought so.
Oh, beg your pardon?
Talking to you.
Yeah.
You
I
said-
thought so, he said.
Did you say? What do you mean? Where was the cottages? Because they're not there now, are they?
Now, as you went up the slope to go on the footbridge,
Yeah.
to your left, there was a row, and in front of them there was a bit of drying ground, and you walked along the pathway into Wharton Street, shortcut into Wharton Street.
Oh, there were some old cottages there, was there?
Yes, right by the side of the
I think
footbridge.
that are they bungalow? Is it bungalows
Where the
now?
bungalows are, yes. Yeah.
And they got obviously they got demolished.
Yes, but and then next thing we knew there were bungalows there for old people.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, but then there was new. Oh, and in one of the houses on the other side, that's where PC Dexter lived, in the police house. And then there was PC Parsons on Caledonian Road. And then there was another one, corner of Hine Street. I've forgotten his name.
Were they actual police houses?
Yes,
or?
yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I know. I can remember when it was the office, they were selling police houses off at, I think they started at Ramby, selling police houses. Yeah.
And you was involved in that because
I can remember, you know.
Was it a solicitors that you worked for?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. See if we can get a bit further with the people in the picture.
Yeah. Oh, I was.
Can you remember what the mayor's name was?
Yes, Councillor J.R. Waterfield.
Is that Mr. Waterfield? Is it? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I don't know why, but his nickname was Pom Waterfield.
Really?
Yeah.
And what year is the photograph?
This is 1945, June 1945, and war was over on May the 8th. So then they were going round organising who was donating what to the party. Yeah.
And this is like a street party?
Yes.
Are you in this photo?
Yes.
You are actually in that photo, are you?
Yes, where the wind's blowing my dress up. And that's my sister, Shirley Crossland, Betty Hodson, Dennis Hodson. Betty Hodson and her family came from Blackpool. And that's young Dennis. Well, then he sent me, when we found out that my chiropodist had been to him before. She came to me one day, I showed her this picture, and she made a remark about it, in where he stood with his hands in his pockets. And I said, oh, that's Dennis Hodgson. I said, he lived at East Dean. But she said, I don't believe it. She said, I've just come from him.
Really?
Yeah. So then when she told him, you see, he gave me his phone number, etc. So, you know, we chatted once or twice. And that's really strange, that
How
was.
long ago was that?
2 or 3 years ago.
Just 2 or 3 years ago, she'd been.
Yes, to him before.
And where does he?
Oh, I don't know where it
but
is.
Somewhere in Retford.
Yes, it's in Retford.
He's in Retford.
But he can't see very well, unfortunately. But
wow.
yeah. I think I might have sent a photocopy
of
Dennis, a bit, which he'd sent me. He's a bit older when he sent me that picture.
So, going back to the picture, we'll just go through the people again in a minute. But can you remember that day? Because it's a long time ago, isn't it?
It is, yes. But I can remember him being born.
No, but can you remember that day when you was on at that street party?
Oh, yes.
You can remember the day?
Yes, because it was windy. I remember that, you see.
Yeah, because I've noticed that people have got the coats on and things.
So, yeah. I think it was in June 1945, because it made the 8th the war ended.
And
the war in Europe. But then it was August 15th when the war ended with Japan.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and we had a VJ party then.
Right.
And
okay.
it rained, so Mrs. Mary Crossland and her family did the party in their front room. We had a nice tea.
So you had another party?
Yes, yeah. And we had a fancy dress, and I remember I won first prize as an Eastern lady, and my dad was dressed as old Mother Riley.
Which house was that? That you did that?
That was outside the fish. That was at the fish shop. But it was number 3, Pear Tree Cottage, where the Auntie Mary Crossland lived then.
And that's where you celebrated?
VJ. But VE, it was sat out here, you see, in the street, more or less just near our house there.
And can you remember who took the photo? Can you remember the photo being taken?
Yeah, Percy Laws signed it here.
Wow. Is that the original photo, or is that...
Yes, it is. This is.
So is that Percy Law's actual signature?
Yes, yeah.
And how long after that day did you get that photo?
Oh, I can't remember.
Would it have been... Did your mum and dad buy it?
Yes, yeah.
Can you remember Percy Law's coming? Can you remember?
Oh, yes, and I've got a painting that he cleaned up for me, one that I'd taken because it had got a hole in me. It was one of my grandmother's paintings, and it was in a big heavy frame apparently, she said, and it fell and knocked a chunk out the top of the piano.
Really?
Anyway, it had got a bit of a hole in. Anyway, Percy Laws repaired that for me and revarnished it, cleaned it up.
Did Percy Laws have a shop, or?
Oh yes, he did, in Carrogate, photographer, and then Ron Bear did. He had that shop a few years after.
Ron Bear lived on this street, didn't he?
Yes.
Did you know?
Yes. And he's taken a lot of photos of Retford before things were altered.
Yeah.
And I sent him that. Oh, that's down the one picture of Richard Street, but I can't find the original that Miss Appleby gave Mother. It's somewhere about.
Really?
Yeah.
So was Percy Laws?
He was an artist as well. He had a shop for years, but the sad part about it is, I think in his will there was instructions. A lot of his things were, destroyed.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
And he had a shop on Carrogate. Whereabouts would that have
well,
been?
it was. I don't know it is now, but it was opposite where Glasby's shop was.
Oh, okay.
And there was Miss Bess, the ladies' underwear shop. There was.
What do you think Glasby's is now? Is that?
I think it's a hairdresser's the other side.
Okay. You know when you
where
think...
all the co-op was.
Yeah.
Co-op Arcadia, and then there was co-op. A fish shop. Well, wet fish was sold. But I think originally I remember seeing where the blind were doing about making baskets, willow baskets and things before that.
Do you think Percy Laws was opposite?
About opposite, yeah.
The co-op?
And somewhere near there. And there was some steps. I mean, it was covered over. There was a room above the shop, and then along there there was some stairs, and I think it was an insurance company there or something up the steps.
Okay.
But I mean, I remember. I don't know whether it'd be when you were on Richard Street, but the lady who had the ladies' shop was Maisie Payne.
Oh yeah, okay. That was on Carrogate.
Yes, and Percy Laws was the other part of the building.
Right, got you. Do you know where Percy Laws lived?
I think it was Leverton.
Right, okay.
Yeah, and now what did they call? There was his wife and I think a sister, but I just can't recall the sister's name.
So that day then,
Yeah.
this day,
Yeah.
was Percy Laws part of the party, or did he just turn up to take a picture?
I think he just turned up. I can't remember seeing him sat at the table or anything. He just...
Can you remember him taking the picture?
Yes, because of the wind blowing, you see, yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and it was blowing Shirley's dress a bit, yeah.
Did he... Because I'm just trying to think back to like 1945, taking a picture. Did he turn up with a box on a tripod? Can you remember what that looked like or not? Was it something big? Did you have to stand perfectly still for a few seconds, or can you remember?
Well, it didn't seem to take long, as I remember.
Did he just take one photo?
As far as I know.
And did he go elsewhere after that?
Oh, yes, it was... Yes, there's quite a few street parties.
Yeah, I think I've seen some other street parties.
Yeah,
Percy
and there was also Kirk Street, which we were invited to, because our grandmother supplied the milk for their party. So, and of course we used to call every day at a grandma's from school, you see. And we knew all the children, well, most of the children on Kirk Street as well. So
Why did you have the mayor at yours?
Well, everybody did. They used to go to all the parties, as far as I know.
So, right? Did the mayor turn up with Percy Laws? Do you think? Did Percy?
They could have done.
I think he probably was following the mayor, taking pictures of him at street parties.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. There's one of the children on Caledonian Road I've seen in pictures in the paper. The Retford Times years ago used to put photos of times gone by, and when war had been, I think there was some when the war had been over 50 years, that was when the life in wartime Bassetlaw was sort of being compiled.
That's a book.
Yeah, their only thing, but with all the people who remember, who were children during the war, and some Yarmouth evacuees who made the rest of their lives in Retford, like Raymond the milkman, who was at Barber's at Eton on the farm there, and he used to deliver milk later on with horse and cart. Yeah.
Wow.
And he lived, and his wife was a school teacher. I've forgotten her name now.
Was he evacuee? Was he?
Yes, he was Yarmouth boy, and I think he liked being on the farm that much. For Mr. Barber, the farmer at Eton.
Wow.
But he's not on this photo. But Raymond was well known. We just knew him as Raymond the milkman, who came with his horse and cart. And then my uncle did after my grandma retired.
Did you have your milk delivered by horse and cart here?
No, you see, because my grandmother had the milk business on Grove Street, and when we were at school we used to bring a can of milk home at dinner time, fresh milk. It was before, as she used to say, it's pasteurised and hypnotised. She didn't like the idea of milk being pasteurised.
Was that where on Grove Street was that?
Number 76 Grove Street.
Oh, that's where she made. That's where.
Yeah, she did.
That's where she lived and made the milk.
Yeah, and made the ice cream and wedding cakes and ice in them as well. Yeah.
Wow. How can you? Right. Okay. So was it a proper little farm that then? Do you think or?
Well, not when they were at Grove Street. It was just the outbuildings with the stable and the garage and the haylofts above, where that mural was painted.
And where did they get the milk?
From wards at Grove used to deliver it in big milk churns. Each morning, fresh milk. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can remember them coming. There was once who used to deliver it. He was Dick Ward. But so whether I think there was another brother, but I just can't remember his name. But it was mainly Dick who delivered the milk in these big churns.
Right. Okay. So your Nan was the milk lady.
Yes.
She got the milk and she
delivered it.
And she
it was in a big churn on this cart and a bucket as well full of milk. And the bucket used to have the measures inside. And we used to get a pint of milk, measure a pint of milk out and put it in the milk jugs when we went to help her when it was school holidays. Yeah.
So back to the picture then.
Yeah. Now then, we're still at the table. I told you Mrs. Selby and her brother, and then there's Joan Woodward. At that time she lived on Caledonian Road. She was deaf and dumb, and then her father was Charlie Woodward, who became the school attendance officer, and then they had Taylor's shop next door to my grandma on Grove Street. After
we're talking about somebody on there. So there's a lady on there who's deaf and dumb, is she?
Well, she was a girl, schoolgirl.
One of the girls is deaf and dumb.
Yes, she's between Mrs. Selby's brother and Gladys Hibbard, who lived next door to
So, and what was the girl who was deaf and dumb?
Joan Woodward.
Joan Woodward.
Yes. And
what's that to do with Taylor's next to?
Well, her parents took over the shop from when it was Mrs. Taylor had died first, and then her husband and daughter Ethel, who was my godmother, moved to Trent Street. And then the Woodwards had the shop.
Is her mum and dad there or not, or is she just there on her own?
No, they're not. No, she's there on her own. She's near my mum and Crystal Fletcher. That's it. There's the lupins on the table in a vase.
Yeah, lupins. Yeah, I've got you. Yeah, in a vase. Yeah.
Yeah. They're in front of her, yeah. And then there's next to her is Gladys Hibbard, who lived next door to us. And she used to work for Arthur Walker and his wife. He was an estate agent on Bridgegate. Gladys.
What was that called? The estate agent called? Can you remember?
Yes, Arthur Walker.
That's what the estate agent was called, was it?
Yes, yes.
And that was on Bridgegate?
Yes, just over the river bridge on the left-hand side. They lived in one of the houses as well. Well, they're, I think, Trinity Hospital houses, aren't they, up there?
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's Gladys at the end of the table. Now, we come to the right-hand side. I don't know whether you want me to start from the back or the front.
Well, You could, just start from the back. You mean the left-hand side of the table, yeah?
Here, this right hand side.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. There's a man behind a lady in a paper hat. You can just see his eyes and forehead. That's Fred Glasby, who lived at number 18, Peter Glasby's father. And his brother, Ralph Glasby, had the grocer's shop on Carrowgate, which is now, I think, a hairdresser's.
Right, okay, yeah, okay.
And then in front of him is Mrs. Phillipson, whose husband was the railway engine driver. And to the right of her is Queenie Cross, Mrs. Crossland, who was Marjorie's mother and Shirley's mother.
Where does she live?
They lived at number 11 Richard Street.
Got you.
And in between her and the name of this couple I don't know is Mrs. Gwen Neal. Her husband was a railway engine driver. They lived at number 8 Richard Street. And sort of in front of Mrs. Crossland you can see a man's bald head. That is Ernest Manby, who was an engine driver on the railway. And his father was an inspector on the railway.
Are they Richards?
He was number 12 Richard Street. And behind Mrs. Crossland and between this gentleman in glasses, who I don't know his name, is Mrs. Holt, and she was very deaf. And her husband, Billy, was a signalman at Thrumpton signal box. And
Did they live on?
well, yes, they lived at number 5 Richard Street. And say she was dead. And then when he was retired from the railway, he worked at Mr. Shaw the cobbler's on Carrowgate Bridge. And he used to mend shoes at home. And we went once, he was in his shed at the bottom of the garden, and he got his mouth full of tacks, taking them out and hammering them in shoes. And talking at the same time.
Right, you went to the shop?
No, to his house, and we went to number 5, you see, at the bottom of his garden. I think Dad had gone to see if he could buy some leather off him, because Dad used to mend our shoes for us, put fresh leather on the heels and soles. And there was Billy Holt with these tacks in his mouth. You know, he got put handful and put.
So what was his name?
Billy Holt, Hoult.
And what was his wife's name?
I think she was Clarissa.
And they lived at number 5?
Yes. And then number 7 was the Selbys, where Kenneth and Victor Stowers was. His friend Victor, and Victor used to come and see me. In very later years, and sadly he died a few years ago. But he loved it at Retford. He did. He was always on about the beautiful view from his little back bedroom he had when he was evacuated. Yeah.
Living in Richard Street, looking out the back.
Yeah.
And that was number 7?
Yes. Wow. He was at, yeah. And I mean, he used to come and see Selbys when war was over, you see. And then sadly, that happened to Mrs. Selby. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Now then, but this couple, I don't know, they've got a child in the picture.
Can you remember them on the day or not?
I just seen them on the day, and I didn't know them. So whether they were friends of somebody, I don't know. Well, then behind the child she's holding is a lady in a paper hat. That's Mrs. Redfern, who had the fish shop.
Oh, okay.
You know.
What number Richard Street was the fish shop?
That's number 1, although it's the second house. But you see, the house where the Hodsons lived was called East Dean. And I have it in my mind that Mr. Hodson was the only one who'd had the house built. And everybody else's house was rented.
Got you.
Yeah.
Is that East Dean?
Yes.
That was the one that was built.
Yes. That's at the back of my mind.
So on that picture there's the lady who owned the chip shop.
Yes. At one time, yes. But I can't see her husband anyway. No. And I think he had a tobacconist shop near Swan Hotel. Mr. Redford.
Swan. Where's the Swan?
It's what is it's a shop, but it still looks like a house. Just as you've come to bottom of Carrowgate Bridge coming into town.
Okay. It's STA.
Yes, that's it. STA.
That was the Swan.
Restaurant. Yes.
But near there was a tobacconist, was it?
Yes. Yeah. And I think that was Mr. Redford who had it in later years. Now, just by the side of Mrs. Redfern is Bill Selby, where Kenneth and Victor were billeted, and he was a railway engine driver. And he's sort of at the side of me, well, but behind me and Jean. I was in the gutter, stood in the gutter. And then there's...
You're the girl with the dress that's
blowing, the wind's caught it, yeah. The Marilyn Monroe one.
The what?
Marilyn Monroe picture.
Oh, you're Marilyn Monroe in that one, are you?
Yeah, it looks like it, yes. And Shirley Crossland is in front of Jean, who lived at number 11. And then by the side of her is Betty Hodson, who was a relative of the Retford Hodsons. They came from Blackpool, were billeted in Richard Street. And by the side of Mrs. Hodson is Mr. Revel, who had the fish shop and later on was a cobbler.
Right, is that the fish shop?
Yes.
And was later a cobbler?
Yes.
A cobbler at a shop somewhere or just at home?
He was at Richard Street, Mr. Revel was, yeah.
As a cobbler?
Yes.
Got you.
Yeah, remember him. And by the side of him is Mrs. Hodson from Blackpool. And then by the side of her, in the jacket, with Dennis in front of her, is Doris Hibbard, who lived next door to us. And then by the side of her is her mother, Nancy Hibbard. They lived at number 15. And in front is little Dennis Addison. So now then, in front of the mayor is, here's Mr. Redfern, yeah.
Oh, you found
He's
it?
behind the mayor. He's on the right-hand side of the mayor.
Right.
And behind him on the left is Mrs. Agnes Hodson, known as Dolly. That's Dennis's mother. And then the right-hand side of Mr. Redford is Billy Holt, the signalman and cobbler. Yes. Yeah, I've said Ernest Manby and I've told you that one. Yeah, but I don't know the name of the couple, but the man in glasses and the lady holding the baby. I don't know who they are.
Okay.
They'll be relatives of somebody or some fresh evacuees, but I've never seen them before they appeared on here.
So, you know, that day,
Yeah,
Joan,
yeah.
and I mean, you've remembered it, or said the names of nearly everybody on that photograph.
Yeah.
Can you remember that day, apart from that photo? Anything else about the day? I know you said it was windy, but can you remember?
Yeah.
Can you remember, like, being excited?
Well, I don't know whether it was that day we had sports on what is now Oakland's Lane bungalows. That was St Albans used to have the tennis court there, and we could stand on the pigsty wall and see them playing tennis.
Oh, really?
Yes, and then of course the field I told you about. Did I tell you about Searchlight Battery?
I think you said there was a searchlight and gunner.
Yes. That was in the third field, over the wall.
Right. Okay.
There was the allotments, then there was a cornfield, and then the field over our garden wall was where the cows and the bull was. And then the next field was where the Searchlight Battery was. The searchlight was at the bottom of the field. Then there was another field, and it was the road in front of Bracken Lane Farm then. Yeah.
Was there a gun with the searchlight?
Yeah, yes.
So it's
Yes, I can remember when the soldiers had left. I remember going in the field and the sandbags were still round it. I can remember.
Do you think that probably lines up near Bracken Lane School somewhere? Or?
Yes, somewhere that area, yeah.
And
The playing field here was 3 fields originally. And the last field was where the soldiers were.
It's called...
Sorry.
It's called Oaklands, isn't it? Was it always called... Did it have another name in the past, the field? Can you remember?
No. I mean, it was because of the Oaklands Cottage, I think it would be named after.
Oh, okay.
There was a cottage there. Whether it's still there or not now, I don't know.
And you could hear that gun firing?
Yes, and see the searchlight, yeah. And that's when my parents were watching the air raids when they got a German aeroplane in the searchlights. And that's when they started machine gunning and they went in the pigsty.
Do you think the gun ever hit a plane?
Well, nothing, nothing ever crashed that we knew of. I mean, you kept hearing all the noises, but... Because I can remember Mum was just going to come out the cupboard and there was a bang and she jumped. I can remember her jumping. And she dashed back in cupboard then.
Oh, right. That was because of the banging and stuff.
Yeah.
Was there more than one search? I mean, did you look out or,
No, there was only one searchlight.
For Retford?
Yeah, that we could see from here whether there were any others.
Oh,
but
okay.
We used to knit scarves and gloves for soldiers, and they used to come and sit on the wall and talk to us.
At the bottom of the garden?
Yes.
Were the soldiers Retford men?
No, they were... I've forgotten which unit they were. But I mean, they were soldiers at Ramby Camp. And my auntie met an Irishman, and they used to go to dances together, and he was in the Royal Army Service Corps, and he was sent to Palestine, somewhere at Haifa I think it was, in Palace, and we used to write to him, and I've still got letters that he wrote to me in 1941.
Wow.
It's in some of the information. There's his letter there. I don't know whether you've come across it.
No.
But I saw it the other day, 1940. Richard Reed.
So I took some stuff, and there was some letters in there which I've got copies of.
Yes, yeah. Well, there's if Richard Reed, that's the soldier, and he came at Christmas because in the letter is mentioned. I wonder whether Daddy Christmas has been or something. Can you remember that?
Yes.
Yeah. And when when he was repatriated from Palestine area, he was at my grandma's one day when we called there after school, and he walked home with us to see Mum and Dad, and he sent us. He was from Belfast. He sent us each a calendar. I had one with the scenery, but I can't remember where that was. But Mum and Dad, he sent one that had got a picture of a lady spinning, and I remembered the poem on it. It said, "They sit and spin in Donegal beside the cabins white, where roses clamber up in the sunshine bright. Of herrings homespun there is praise, through fingers with the clever ways."
Wow.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, that upsets you, does it?
It was ever so nice. And he kept writing to us, yeah.
And who was that, Joan?
Richard Reed.
And what was it?
He was in the Royal Army Service Corps, and he met my auntie at a dance at the town hall, and we started writing to him when he was posted to Palace.
Did he not marry your aunt? Did he marry your auntie?
No, unfortunately she'd met someone else, and we were really sorry because we did like Richard.
Did you ever meet him again? See him?
Yes, that's when it was back in England. That's as I say, he was at my grandma's one day when we came from school.
Got you.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Where does that poem? Why did that? Did he write that poem?
No, it was on the calendar. On the picture of the calendar.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I missed
Yes.
that.
Yeah. Yes.
Huh.
Yeah. So.
So going back to that day.
Yeah.
So we've got this lovely photo. You remember all the people.
But, yeah.
Can you remember the day? I mean, is it? Have you got cakes and things?
Oh yes. But people. I think my mum made some sponge buns, and of course people did sandwiches. Oh, and jelly and things. And I can remember that there was our cruet with salt and pepper and etc. on the table we put, and also the cutlery. So as we knew it was ours, we put coloured cotton tied round all the cutlery that we'd lent for the day. Yeah, and you see, we knew all the pots and that and everything.
Okay.
But I mean, people used to go around and said, "Will you be able to, what would you be able to contribute to the party?"
And was it a long party? Was it all day? Was it a few hours or an hour?
Well, it was a few hours, and then, as I say, I don't know whether it was then that we had the fancy dress. But one time when it was a party, whether it was VJ or VE, we had sports on the field where Oakland's Lane is parties now, and there's skipping races and three-legged races and all sorts of things doing. Yeah.
Wow.
yeah. And that there was a pathway by the side of number 23, yeah, Richard Street. You walk down the path, and at the bottom, where the wall ended for number 23, on the right-hand side at the end of the path, was a stile which we went over into the field. Well, the paddock, as we call it.
Oh,
Because
okay.
later on, Mr. Piers Crossland, who had a coal merchant's business, his horse used to be in there. And one day, somehow or other, he got out the field and landed up at our, well, first of all, at number 21's backyard. And I can remember hearing Pat shout, "Mum, there's Captain in the yard." That was the horse. And then he trotted round to the front, and I don't know whether you've particularly noticed the dividing wall from ours and number 19 it's got part of, so many bricks at the top stood out, and then it comes down to a lower level,
Yeah.
like a standing in a stable, and he was stood there. When Dad went out to look, he was stood there. Oh, so
Did he
he was
notice you? There's a horse been in.
Yeah,
out
yeah,
here.
yeah.
Called Captain.
And at Pat's as well, at the Askews as well. Yeah, so I don't know whether Pat's still alive or not, is she?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, if you're in contact with her any time, ask her if she remembers Captain getting out of the field.
Was Pat your? Was
And when she lived at 21 when we were at 17.
and age-wise, was there a difference?
Only probably a year or so, or something like that.
So Pat was a friend.
Yeah, oh yeah. And she suffered with asthma.
Right.
Yes, Pat, yeah.
Joan,
Yeah.
don't say any more.
No, right, you've got enough to contend with, have you?
We'll leave it there.
Right.
That was absolutely. Do you know what, Joan?
Yeah,
That is a lovely picture,
yeah,
and to think that we can know so much more about what's happening in that picture because of you is just amazing. The fact that you're on there with your skirt being Marilyn Monroe, and then you've got your sister and all these others.
Yeah, but I did write out who lived at which house and something about, what I knew about them.
Where is that?
It's somewhere in this house, on a notepad somewhere.
Well,
so hopefully Richard and Amy can find it.
I'll mention that to Richard.
Yeah.
Thank you for today. That was absolutely lovely. I'm going to switch this off.